There we go. Alright, we're getting it going. We're getting it going. Lost Savages are finding their way home. We're gonna get started here in a second. We're gonna get started here in a second. The state of Ukraine. Possible to find. Oh man, what's going on, guys? Thank you for tuning in tonight. Appreciate you being here. Welcome back to the Old American Savage Show chat channel. We got a great show for you guys tonight. We have some really good guests that are coming in from across the nation. Ladies and gentlemen, the Beatles. I thought that was pretty good. I thought that was pretty good. Where is that damn Clint Eastwood song we were listening to last night? Son of a bitch. All right, well. We're going to do it again. We're going to do it again. Man. Nice, Bane Bear. That's cool. That is cool. Your Peter Griffin is beer. You know, I could go for a beer. Oh, I forgot I got a Guinness in the fridge. I'll be right back. Are we getting more of the Savages in? I hope we are. Gonna drop some knowledge on y'all tonight. It'll be fun. I'm gonna be like that cool hip teacher that everybody likes, you know? I'm blinded by the lights. Get myself situated here. Yeah, I got a pile of dog over here. What are you gonna do? Oh, okay. Okay. What up, Scott from Montana, you dick? I've got sad news for you, lads. Lads, just 1 second with the music here. Hold the music, boys. I got something to say. I got something to say and get off the bottom of my heart here. Boys, I'd like to take a moment and pause in reflection for the fact that I've only got 1 Guinness left. After that, I'm fucked. Back to the start, yes, but not tonight, because right now I'm higher than a giraffe pussy. I got a Guinness here, and we're gonna have a nice cold one together, guys. I promise you. Bring the fucking rope. Why should we always get the fucking rope? Oh, last to the Guinness, boys. I tell you. Got some eggplant energy in the chat. What's up, guys? All right. Let's let a few more people trickle in. Let's look at a few people get home. Lost Savages are coming back home. You know, I'm ringing the bell. They're coming back. They're coming back, man. That's what's gonna happen. So let's chill for 1 or 2 more minutes. Get more people in here. I'm gonna show y'all a very interesting video. Can I get some eggplants in the chat, please? It's a thing of beauty, boys. It's a thing of beauty, I tell ya. Lucifer, you gotta love it. Alright, about to get started. What the fuck are you talking about, wrong pint glass? It's a fucking Guinness glass, boy. Almost done, boys. Second round. Don't you go anywhere. Gonna show you some amazing stuff here. Almost ready to go, but thank you for the biddies, Irish Book. Irish Book! God bless you, lad. Alright, welcome back to the stream, guys. Now, of course, this isn't the proper American Savage podcast. This is John Burke by himself, just kicking it here with you bastards on Twitch here. And I've got something to show you tonight. A video I've been trying to get out all day. And something I feel you should all be aware of. Now, you know what's going on in Ukraine over there. You see what Russia's doing. Just horrible, horrible things over there. And you see, right, that the press is telling us one thing. And then you hear the people over there telling us another. But there's a thing here. There's a thing here. In all seriousness, when the press has been lying to us, well, I shouldn't say lying per se, but they have not been telling the entire truth. Now, if you're like me, you don't remember a lot of what kind of happened before you really started truly paying attention to politics, and a lot of things become forgotten, or you're made unaware of, or you're unaware of that you are eventually made aware of. The more that I start to learn the history of Ukraine, the history of the Russian-USSR conflict, again, when they fell in 91, prior to that, and then immediately after that, the breaking off of Ukraine and things such as that, you start to learn their history a little bit. But you're learning their history through manipulated media, through Google searches, through, internet in general. It's very difficult to get to the bottom of the truth. Well, there is a guy by the name of Stephen F. Colbert, I believe. And this guy essentially studied Russian history, everything, for over something like 40 years. And I'm going to show you a video of this guy. And they bring him on here. And back in 2014, for those that don't know, there was a coup in the Ukraine where a pro-Russian leaning government that was elected democratically and legally was overthrown violently, illegally, and installed a pro-un-Russian government. Now, it was a more American-friendly government, okay? America backed this. You know what? I'm going to let you guys watch this video. So I just ask you open your minds a little bit, listen to what they're saying, and it makes perfect sense. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist. This is not saying, oh, so-and-so is a false flag. This is legitimate history. So let's give this a watch together, okay?
To our eyes. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now! Democracy Now!
I'm going to mute myself while you listen.
Warren Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
And I'm Juan Gonzalez. Welcome to all of our listeners and viewers around the country and around the world. A short-lived truce has broken down in Ukraine as street battles have erupted between anti-government protesters and police. Last night, the country's embattled president and the opposition leaders demanding his resignation called for a truce and negotiations to try to resolve Ukraine's political crisis. But the truce only lasted a few hours. The last 3 days have been the bloodiest period of Ukraine's 22-year post-Soviet history. Over 50 people have died, including at least 21 today. The truce ended today when armed protesters attempted to retake Independence Square. Both sides have accused the other of using live ammunition. A Ukrainian paramedic described the chaotic scene.
Some bodies are at the concert hall, some are at the barricades. Now there are maybe around 15 or 20 dead. It is hard to count as some are carried away, others are resuscitated. Now, as far as I know, 3 dead people are at the city hall, and 2 more dead are at the main post office. There's so many at the concert hall that we didn't even take them.
The Ukrainian Parliament Rada and cabinet buildings have reportedly been evacuated because of fears they could be stormed by protesters. The street clashes are occurring while the Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych is meeting with the foreign ministers from Germany, Poland, and France. The Obama administration stepped up pressure on the Ukrainian government Wednesday by announcing a visa ban on 20 members of the Ukrainian government. The U.S. is also threatening to place sanctions on the Ukrainian government. The protests began in late November after President Yanukovych reversed his decision to sign a long-awaited trade deal with the European Union, or EU, to forge stronger ties with Russia instead. To talk more about the latest in Ukraine, we're joined by Stephen Cohen, Professor Emeritus of Russian Studies and Politics at New York University and Princeton University. His most recent book, Soviet Fates and Lost Alternatives from Stalinism to the New Cold War is now out in paperback. His latest piece in The Nation is called Distorting...
Shit, sorry about that, guys. I thought it was unmuted. Okay, so what I'm saying is, the gentleman you're about to watch, all he's doing is recalling fact. The facts that he is recalling have been proven. It's irrefutable. Listen to how he breaks it down. And look how today our MSM is crucifying Russia. They are crucifying Russia. Russia's the bad guy, which they are for what they're doing. But why are they doing it? Why is Russia doing this? And it's not just to restore the Soviet Union. It's not just that. It goes deeper. He's going to break it down very simplistically.
Russia, how the American media misrepresent Putin, Sochi, and Ukraine. So talk about the latest, Professor Cohen.
Where do you want me to begin? I mean, we are watching history being made, but history of the worst kind. That's what I'm telling my grandchildren. Watch this. What's happening there, let's take the big picture, then we can go to the small picture. The big picture is people are dying in the streets every day. The number 50 is certainly too few. They're still finding bodies. Ukraine is splitting apart down the middle because Ukraine is not one country, contrary to what the American media, which speaks about the Ukraine and the Ukrainian people. Historically, ethnically, religiously, culturally, politically, economically, it's two countries. One half wants to stay close to Russia, the other wants to go west. We now have reliable reports that the anti-government forces in the streets, and there's some very nasty people among them.
Guys, remember, this is 2014. That's when he's talking about this. This is not now. This is 2014. Just keep that in mind.
Are seizing weapons in Western Ukrainian military bases. So we have clearly the possibility of a civil war. And the longer-term outcome may be, and I want to emphasize this because nobody in the United States seems to want to pay attention to it, the outcome may be the construction, the emergence of a new Cold War divide between West and East, not this time, as it was for our generation, in faraway Berlin, but right on the borders of Russia, right through the heart of Slavic civilization. And if that happens, if that's the new Cold War divide, it's permanent instability and permanent potential for real war for decades to come. That's what's at stake. One last point. Also something that nobody in this country wants to talk about. The Western authorities, who bear some responsibility for what's happened, and who therefore also have blood on their hands, are taking no responsibility. They're uttering utterly banal statements which, because of their vacuous nature, are encouraging and rationalizing the people in Ukraine who are throwing Molotov cocktails, now have weapons, are shooting at police. We wouldn't permit that in any Western capital, no matter how righteous the cause. But it's being condoned by the European Union and Washington as events unfold.
And when you say the Western countries who bear some responsibility, in what sense do they bear responsibility? I mean, clearly there's been an effort by the United States and Europe ever since the collapse of the Soviet Union to pull the former Soviet states into their economic sphere. But is that the way you're talking about it?
I mean that. I mean that Moscow, here, look at it through Moscow's eyes. Since the Clinton administration in the 1990s, the U.S.-led West has been on a steady march toward post-Soviet Russia. Began with the expansion of NATO in the 1990s under Clinton. Bush then further expanded NATO all the way to Russia's borders. Then came the funding of what are euphemistically called NGOs, but they are political action groups funded by the West operating inside Russia. Then came the decision to build missile defense installations along Russia's borders, allegedly against Iran, a country which has neither nuclear weapons nor any missiles to deliver them with. Then comes American military outpost in the former Soviet Republic of Georgia, which led to the War of 2008, and now the West is at the gates of Ukraine. So that's the picture, as Moscow sees it. And it's rational, it's reasonable, it's hard to deny. But as for the immediate crisis, let's ask ourselves this. Who precipitated this crisis? The American media says it was Putin and the very bad, though democratically elected, president of Ukraine, Yanukovych. But it was the European Union, backed by Washington, that said in November to the democratically elected president of a profoundly divided country, Ukraine, you must choose between Europe and Russia. That was an ultimatum to Yanukovych. Remember, wasn't reported here, at that moment, what did the much despised Putin say? He said, why? Why does Ukraine have to choose? We're prepared to help Ukraine avoid economic collapse, along with you, the West. Let's make it a tripartite package to Ukraine. And it was rejected in Washington and in Brussels. That precipitated the protests in the streets. And since then, the dynamic that any of us who have ever witnessed these kinds of struggles in the streets unfolded as extremists have taken control of the movement from the so-called moderate Ukrainian leaders. I mean, the moderate Ukrainian leaders with whom the Western foreign ministers are traveling to Kiev to talk, and they've lost control of the situation. By the way, people ask, excuse me, is it a revolution? Is it a revolution? A much abused word. But one sign of a revolution is the first victims of revolution are the moderates. And then it becomes a struggle between the extreme forces on either side. And that's what we're witnessing.
Let's go to the Ukrainian opposition leader, Arseny Yatsenyuk, who admitted earlier today the opposition does not have full control of protesters in Independence Square.
The only chance to do it is to stop the riot police, to stop the protesters, to impose a DMZ, like demilitarized zone, and to move this conflict from the streets to the parliament.
Parts of the protesters are out of control?
No one, I would be very frank that the government doesn't control the riot police, and it's very difficult for the opposition to control Maidan, and there are a number of forces who are uncontrolled.
So Ukraine
this is the truth.
Now.
Ukraine is in a big mess.
That's Ukrainian opposition leader Arseny Yatsenyuk. Professor Cohen.
A moderate.
Who
wants to be president?
Let's go to President Obama. He's in Mexico for the big Mexico-Canada-U.S. summit, talking about Ukraine.
With regard to Ukraine, along with our European partners, we will continue to engage all sides. And we continue to stress to President Yanukovych and the Ukrainian government that they have the primary responsibility to prevent the kind of terrible violence that we've seen, to withdraw riot police, to work with the opposition to restore security and human dignity and move the country forward.
Listen how they church that up.
Progress towards a multi-party technical government that can work with the international community on a support package and adopt reforms necessary for free and fair elections next year. Ukrainians are a proud and resilient people who've overcome extraordinary challenges in their history, and that's a pride and strength that I hope they draw on now.
That's President Obama in Mexico, Professor Cohen.
What are you asking me to comment on?
Your response to his
response.
response.
What he just said, shame. Shame. He is saying that the responsibility for restoring peace is on the Ukrainian government, and it should withdraw its security forces from the streets. But let me ask you, if in Washington, people throwing Molotov cocktails are marching on Congress, and these people are headed for the Ukrainian Congress, these people have barricaded entrance to the White House and are throwing rocks at the White House security guard, would President Obama withdraw his security forces? This is, and do you know what this does? And let's escape partisanship here. I mean, lives are at stake. This incites these kinds of statements that Obama made. It rationalizes what the killers in the streets are doing. It gives them Western license, because he's not saying to the people in the streets, stop this, stop shooting policemen, stop attacking government buildings, sit down and talk. And the guy you had on just before, a so-called moderate leader, what did he just tell you? We have lost control of the situation. That's what I just told you. He just confirmed that. So what Obama needs to say is, we deplore what the people in the streets are doing when they attack the police, the law enforcement official. And we also don't like the people who are writing on buildings, Jews live here. Because these forces, these quasi-fascist forces, let's address this issue.
Listen.
The last time I was on your broadcast, you found some guy somewhere who said there was none of this there. All right, What percent are the quasi-fascists of the opposition? Let's say they're 5%. I think they're more, but let's give them the break, 5%. But we know from history that when the moderates lose control of the situation, they don't know what to do. The country descends in chaos. 5% of a population that's tough, resolute, ruthless, armed, well-funded, and knows what it wants can make history. We've seen it through Europe. We've seen it through Asia. This is a reality. And where Washington and Brussels are on this issue, they won't step up and take their responsibility.
Well, even in most...
All right, so we're halfway through this video. If you're just tuning us, this was filmed back in 2014 when Ukraine had a coup that overthrew a pro-Russian government that had been democratically elected by the people. And what people don't seem to understand is that Ukraine is not whole in solidarity for the most part. There are split factions within it. Russian loyalists and separatists. So when Obama is essentially saying, you know, we're going to back this coup that's going on, and Ukraine's saying, like, you know, they explain it. I will share the link after this video. I will post in the chat, I promise you. But essentially, the thing that I want you all to take away from this is that America involved itself all over this. And the ultimate reasoning, you remember the Cuban Missile Crisis, right? They were getting too close to American borders. That made us very jumpy. They said they could just push one button. They have, I forget where they could say from Cuba missiles would land in America. But essentially, they had far reach, which is dangerous. So if we have a pro-Ukrainian government that is installed back in 2014, which, by the way, is very corrupt, insanely corrupted. People that live there will tell you that. If we're helping support the overthrow for installing a pro-American government, what are they going to let us do? You'll keep hearing about the bio labs being bombed by Russia and shit like that, right? We have missiles. If you think we do not have missiles over there, if you think we do not have military equipment over there, to include probably troops for all I know, if you think we don't have them there, which in turn is what Russia tried doing to us, the Soviet Union tried doing to us, we just tried to do to them, or we just did to them. The EU supported Ukraine. Anytime Russia would say anything, the EU and the rest of them would smack them on the nose and say no. But they're like, hey, they're at our border. You have armament. You have American. Like, no, this is not cool with us. We couldn't do it to you. You can't do it to us. It's like, what the fuck? Listen to what he talks about.
Recent history, whether you look at Libya or whether you look at the situation in Syria, where those presidents warned that there were extremist elements inside a broader popular movement that were eventually going to gain control. This seems like a replay in terms of what's going on here in the Ukraine, of a popular movement, but yet a very, very, as you say, right-wing movement. Not only a right-wing movement, but a fascist movement with a history. Ukraine has had a history of a fascist movement going back to the days of Nazi Germany.
Let's go to real heresy. Let's ask a question. Who's been right about interpreting recent events? Let's go to the Arab Spring. Obama in Washington said this is about democracy now. This is great. Russia said, wait a minute. If you destabilize, even authoritarian leaders in the Middle East, you're not going to get Thomas Jefferson in power. You're going to get jihadists. You're going to get very radical people in power all through the Middle East. Looking back, who is right or wrong about that narrative? Have a look at Egypt. Have a look at Libya. Who was right? Can Russians ever be right about anything? Now what are the Russians saying about Ukraine? They're saying what you just said, that the peaceful protesters, as we keep calling them, I think a lot of them have gone home. There were many. By the way, at the beginning, there were hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands of very decent, liberal, progressive, honorable people in the streets. But they've lost control of the situation. That's the point now. And so the Russians are saying, look, you're trying to depose Yanukovych, who's the elected government. Think, if you overthrow, and by the way, there's a presidential election in a year. The Russians are saying, wait to the next election. If you overthrow him, and that's what Washington and Brussels are saying, that he must go, what are you doing to the possibility of democracy not only in Ukraine, but throughout this part of the world? And secondly, who do you think is going to come to power? Please tell us. And we're silent.
I want to go to the famous leak tape right now. The top State Department official has
1 second, I gotta get the link.
Apologized to her European counterparts after she was caught cursing the European Union, the EU, in a leaked audio recording that was posted to YouTube.
Here's the link.
The recording captured an intercepted phone conversation between the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, Jeffrey Pyatt, and Victoria Nuland, the top U.S. diplomat for Europe. Nuland expresses frustration over Europe's response to the political crisis in Ukraine using frank terms.
So that would be great, I think, to help glue this thing and have the UN help glue it. And, you know, the EU.
While Assistant Secretary of State Victoria Nuland's comment about the EU dominated the news headlines because she used a curse, there were several other very interesting parts of her conversation with the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine.
Let me work on Klitschko, and if you can just keep, I think we want to try to get somebody with an international personality to come out here and help to midwife this thing. And then the other issue is some kind of outreach to Yanukovych, but we probably regroup on that tomorrow as we see how things start to fall into place.
The boy and get the deeds to stick. So Biden's willing.
That's the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, Pyatt, speaking with Victoria Nuland. The significance of what she is saying. She also had gone to Ukraine and was feeding protesters on the front line.
Cookies. Well, here again, the American political media establishment, including the right and the left and the center, because they're all complicit in this nonsense, focused on the two sensational, they thought, aspects of that leaked conversation. She said, F the European Union. And everybody said, oh my God, she said the word. The other thing was, who leaked it? Oh, it was the Russians. Those dirty Russians leaked this conversation. But the significance is what you just played. What are they doing? The highest-ranking State Department official, who presumably represents the Obama administration, and the American ambassador in Kiev are, to put it in blunt terms, plotting a coup d'etat against the elected president of Ukraine. Now, that said, Amy, Juan,
thank you may appreciate
say
that, dude.
Neither of you would, but
thank you very much.
That's a good thing. We don't like this. We don't care if he was elected democratically. He's a rat. He's corrupt. And he is all those things. He is. Let's depose him. That's what the United States should do. Then the United States should stand up and say, that's what we do. We get rid of bad guys. We assassinate them, and we overthrow them. But in Washington and Brussels, they lie. They're talking about democracy now. They're not talking about democracy now. They're talking about a coup now.
Well, this is more from...
And we American citizens should be allowed to choose which policy we want. But they conceal it from us. And I'm extremely angry that the people in this country who say they deplore this sort of thing have fallen silent.
Let's listen to a little bit more of the leaked conversation between the U.S.
You can tell, like, he's in there.
Ukraine, Jeffrey Pyatt and Victoria Nuland,
he's emotionally
the top
invested
U.S.
in that.
diplomat for Europe.
Good. So I don't think Clich should go into the government. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you think, in terms of him not going into the government, just let him sort of stay out and do his political homework and stuff. I'm just thinking, in terms of sort of the process moving ahead, we want to keep the moderate Democrats together. The problem is going to be Tony Book and his guys. And, you know, I'm sure that's part of what Yanukovych is calculating on all of this.
I think Yats is the guy who's got the economic experience, the governing experience. He's the guy, you know, what he needs is Clich and Tony Book on the outside. He needs to be talking to them 4 times a week, you know. I just think Clich going in, he's going to be at that level working for Yatsenyuk. It's just not going to work.
That was Victoria Nuland, the top U.S. diplomat for Europe, speaking with Jeffrey Pyatt, the U.S. ambassador to the Ukraine. Stephen Cohen, this chess game that they're conducting here.
Explain the names. Who is Clich? Yats.
All right. And notice the intimacy which with the Americans deal with the two leading so-called moderate, and these are big shots. They both want to be president, Ukrainian opposition. Klitschko is Vitaly Klitschko, a 6'8" former He resigned his title 2 months ago to enter politics.
This guy is good.
Champion of the world. His residence has been Germany. He pays taxes in Germany. He's a project of Merkel. He represents German interest. I'm sure he's also faithful to Ukraine, but he's got a problem. Yatsenuk, or not Yatsenuk, but the guy she calls Yats, is the representative of the Fatherland Party. It's a big party in Parliament, but Washington likes him a lot. They think he'll be our man. So you could see what they're saying. We don't quite trust Klitschko. Now, if you want to get esoteric, that's the tug between Washington and Berlin. They're not happy with Merkel, the Chancellor of Germany. They don't like the role Merkel's playing generally. They think Germany's gotten too big for its britches. They want to cut Merkel down. So you notice Klitschko, the boxer, is Merkel's proxy, or at least she's backing him. You notice what they say. He's not ready for prime time. Let him do his homework. Now, this guy, I'm bad on Ukrainian names, Yuk, that they say has got to play a role. He's the leader of the Freedom Party, the Svoboda Party, but a large element of that party, to put it candidly, is quasi-fascist. And they're prepared to embrace this guy. This is the guy, by the way, that Senator John McCain in November or December went to Kiev and embraced. Either McCain didn't know who he was or he didn't care.
Are you guys getting it now? Are you waking up and seeing what happened? This isn't conspiracy theorism. This was America's political involvement in a coup that occurred in 2014, and we supported the pro-American because we were going to manipulate them. We were going to utilize them, and they knew this. This is how it goes around the world. It's like, hey, we have a bigger force. We'll back you. You going to be loyal to us? It's like, yeah, okay. All right, then you're our man. You'll be president. It's a puppet president. Alex Jones saying the same thing. He's crazy. Alex Jones also said things like Sandy Hook could have been faked and stuff like that. Sorry. A little different. This is what our president and vice president, Obama and Biden, did back in 2014. And Russia gets enough of this, and a plan set into place that Obama and Biden thought would just coast along for the remainder of time, like we were good. And then eventually Russia's kind of like, no, And now Biden's probably scared shitless. Because here's the deal. If Russia takes Kiev and Ukraine falls, they're going to be exposed. They're fucked. I'm telling you. Biden's got to be pissed as fuck. So look for Biden to find any legitimate reason to commit forces to this war. I'm just saying, look for it if it happens. Because if we can push Russia out, Ukraine stays loyal to us. Right now, they're talking about considering bringing Ukraine into the United Nations, They say that if you're in conflict, you can't join the UN. Oh, but if we pull them in, now they're protected. So America gets to manipulate the UN. Well, not really manipulate. They know what's going on. And say, hey, commit forces now. They're part of NATO. Now we can do military action. And then Russia pushes back. And then now we have a Ukraine that remains as it was. Laundering money. It's true. What do they call them? Bio-research labs. All kinds of shit going on. We have gain of function going on in China. Fauci's emails confirmed. It was proven. Gain of function, $600,000 taxpayer grant. And the shit leaked. Here's the thing. You think it really leaked? Come on. Hong Kong on the verge of a revolution. You remember this? Hong Kong is on the verge of a revolution. Literally calling for Trump. Saying pro-2A, pro-2A. The communism is like, people are fed up with it. And then what happens? What happens? COVID hits the scene. The potential revolution just goes away. Do you remember this? I remember this. These are government power plays. Keeping Ukraine loyal. Keeping China population loyal. Just saying.
The United States is prepared to embrace that guy, too. Anything to get rid of Yanukovych because they think this is about Putin. That's all they really got on their mind.
And yet here you have President Obama, again, speaking yesterday in Mexico.
The States is not to see these as some Cold War chessboard in which...
Thank you for the 1,000 bits, Norris. Appreciate it, homie.
We're in competition with Russia. Our goal is to make sure that the people of Ukraine are able to make decisions for themselves about their future, that the people of Syria are able to make decisions without having bombs going off and killing women and children, or chemical weapons, or towns being starved because a despot wants to cling to power.
Who benefits from the instability, Professor Cohen, in Ukraine, and what does it mean for Putin? Is he concerned about this?
Of course he's concerned. It's right on his borders, and it's all tainting him. I mean, the Washington Post wrote an editorial yesterday. Putin is happy that the violence has broken out in the streets. Everybody understands, even the Washington Post understands, which understands almost nothing about Russia, but they got this, that during the Sochi Olympics, the last thing Putin wants is violence in Ukraine. So why is he happy about it? He deplores it. He's unhappy. He's furious at the president of Ukraine. He read him the riot act on the phone last night. That why doesn't he get control of the situation? What is he doing? So Putin's not responsible for this. Can we speak about Obama?
Very quickly.
Very quickly. I grew up in the segregated South. I voted for him twice as historical justice. That's not leadership. That's a falsification of what's happening in Ukraine. And it's making the situation worse. What he says is that we deplore the violence and call upon the Ukrainian government to withdraw its forces and stop the violence. He needs to talk about what's happening in the streets.
And is it conceivable if Ukraine descends into a further civil war that Russia might intervene?
It's conceivable. It's conceivable. Here, I mean, Yanukovych, you might say, as an advisor to Yanukovych, the president of Ukraine, impose martial law now because you've got bad PR in the West anyway, and you're not in control of the situation. The problem is Yanukovych isn't sure he controls the army.
He just fired the head of the army.
Yeah, we don't know what it means, but it indicates he's not too sure about the army. But by the way, you ask, would Russia intervene? Would NATO intervene? NATO's all over the place.
Thank you, Beer.
NATO was in the former Soviet Republic of Georgia. Ask yourself that. Would NATO send troops in? Is that yes? You think they would? We don't know.
We don't know, yeah.
And we're not going to be told, just like we're not being told what's going on in these private conversations about deposing the president of Ukraine.
Unless
if they
they're
depose,
leaked again.
Yeah, and if the Russians leak them, it doesn't count.
The U.S. can hardly protest, given the whole scandal with the NSA recording
They said, when this got leaked, that this is the low point in statecraft. After Snowden, I mean, what did Tennessee Williams used to say? Mendacity? Mendacity? The mendacity of it all? Don't they trust us, our government, to tell us a little bit of the truth at last?
Stephen Cohen, I want to thank you for being with us. So we're going to move on to Venezuela. Stephen Cohen is Professor Emeritus of Russian Studies and Politics at New York University and Princeton University. His most recent book, Soviet Fates and Lost Alternatives from Stalinism to the New Cold War. It's just out in paperback. His latest piece in The Nation is Distorting Russia, How the American Media Misrepresent Russia, Sochi, and Ukraine. This is Democracy Now! Back.
Dude. What do you guys think? I know that was a lot to digest. They threw a lot at you really quick, and it's like hard to keep the pieces together to see what's going on now. What do you think now? So they're using the Ukrainian president as the poster boy of Ukraine because people love him. And what's not to love? He's the president. He's standing up. He's fighting with his people. He's not leaving them. Therefore, the rest of Ukraine gets painted as good. But you don't know about the story about the president before him, how he took power. It doesn't mean that Russia's good. I don't think Putin is not a good person. But they're certainly not as wrong as the entire world is claiming that they are during this time now. This was provoked. This was provoked repeatedly. So it's like you kick the dog, and then the dog turns around and bites you back, And then everybody in the world says, oh my God, that dog, it bit you. Kill that dog. Well, you're kicking the fuck out of it. What do you expect? And the dog just so happens to be a mean dog, evil dog too. That's the crazy part about all of this. It's like, again, it's not even good versus evil. It's evil versus a lesser evil versus a greater evil. You're kind of like, what the fuck? And I'm not condemning all of the Ukrainian people for this. This was the political leaders. These are the people in charge. These are corrupted governments. So socialists, when you want to sit there and say that the government's fucked up due to corporate greed and corruption, and you want to turn around and say equal for the people, and the government's going to regulate that, are you fucking kidding me? If the government is out there making moves like this, you would trust them with more direct control? Fiscal control? I don't understand that. I just don't understand that. I don't get it. But I don't think a lot of people like have that depth of understanding of what's actually going on. That the so-called government, and don't forget, these are Democrats. Like, oh, it's just Republicans. Obama and Biden facilitated this Ukraine coup or supported it. They knew what they were doing. So the very same people that you Democrats are so pearl-clutchingly just going on about, oh, it's so horrible that Ukrainians are dying. The very same people that you're cheering on, that you want to include socialism, socialist programs and all this stuff, are the very same ones that are getting them killed in the first place. It's the stupidest thing I've ever fucking seen. Stupidest fucking thing I've ever seen. And these people, man, we just... Now we're in an age, in a time, where eventually the truth is going to get out. And people are still going to ignore it. They're still going to ignore it because of political bias and loyalty to party. Am I wrong on this? Like, if I'm wrong, I want to be corrected. If I'm wrong, I want to be corrected, man. I do not want to get this wrong. If I am not understanding this correctly, I want to be corrected the right way. Like, for people to say, no, John, this is wrong. Because the more you put these pieces together, the more like, dude, what the fuck? And now, on Fox News, need for leadership. Ukraine native GOP Rep. Victoria Sparza says if Biden doesn't act fast, blood of many millions of Ukrainians will be on his hands too. Look at that. Look at that. They're putting them in front of the camera. You think Biden is facilitating this? Yeah, tell him to go on the back end. Tell him that we need to get America involved. And then if we can kind of play upon the emotions of the people enough, we'll get the overwhelming support of the American populace, and then we'll just go ahead and commit troops and say, fuck it. Then we can beat the Russians back, and we're good to go, man. Smooth sailing. They're trying to manipulate us left and right. The media is pushing this and pushing this and pushing this. And here's the thing. Fox News, they don't dare run any hit pieces on the Ukrainian president or Ukraine or the history. They're not going to dare touch that. Ukraine has been elevated to such a social status that if you talk back about it's kind of like Trump and the MAGA movement. You do not talk bad about Trump. You do not talk bad about Ukraine. You don't mention the fact that the current president has pictures circulating of him holding a Nazi fucking flag, a Ukrainian version of it. The pictures are circulating, and they're not fucking photoshopped. Dude, there's a lot to this shit that people just don't realize. The end game needs to be keep fucking our troops out of it. And what may be, may be. I honestly think Russia's going to take it. Quite honestly, dude, there is no good outcome. One good outcome is we keep Ukraine, we keep our missiles there, and we keep them at the Russian border. And it keeps Russia scared, which is eventually going to create more provocation over and over, and they will attack again. Or Russia takes Ukraine, EU gets pissed the fuck off. I don't know if it's enough to pull us into an actual war. Putin goes back, and he's done. And Ukraine gets absorbed back into Russia. What Putin does after that, I have no idea. I don't know. No, and no, I don't think it's going to be nuclear war. No. Nuclear war, no. I saw some former American soldiers went over there to help. Help what? Like these veterans that are conservative, that are Republicans and shit like that are going over there, you're fighting to protect a Biden-installed regime. You're helping to keep them safe. You're helping to keep that money laundering operation going. Weapons technology, shit like that, it's over there. Like, let that sink in, guys. Let that fucking sink in. So you think you're going to go do a good cause because the media has manipulated us yet again. And very well done, might I add. You had a lot of us. You really did. You're fighting for American sovereignty in the Ukraine. And again, you can go look this up. Hunter Biden, when that Ukrainian deal went through, guess who's on, I think, the board of directors of some oil company that had ties with freaking Ukraine? Good old Hunter Biden. Little despotism there. It's fucking crazy, right? And the more that I scream this, the more that I'm trying to wake people up to this, people aren't responding. There is a lot of people that won't respond. It's like, nah, that's bullshit, dude. I support Ukraine. It's like, you don't understand. You don't have to support anybody. By supporting Ukraine, you're supporting Biden. It's just trying to get that information out there, man. And if you don't believe it, hey, that's fine. That's perfectly fine, dude. I totally get it. I totally get it. You're entitled to your opinion. But I'm just basing and founding my opinion in historical fact. And it wasn't that long ago either. It was 2014. So I don't think this is a new world order. I think this is more along the lines of you've got United Nations. There are leaders in that are on the fucking take. This is American interest by a corrupt government. And it's not like, here's the thing. I don't think it's like this government that's all in on it. I think it's just individual politicians that go in there and they manipulate it. They have a plan. They do it for their administration. I think there's a lot of people in on it. And they get payoffs and they fucking go on their way. I don't know. I'm probably wrong on that. I don't know. It's all, it's all because we're being lied to by the media. I think if you go in the Telegram chat, the Lost Savage Telegram chat, I saw the photos circulating in there as well. You have to scroll up a ways, but I think they're there. This is the Telegram chat. If somebody's in there that is watching, could you repost those photos, please? I don't know if you're watching or not. Here's the link. That's the Telegram chat. The photos are circulating in there. The actual Nazi photos have been proven through the media and stuff like that. They're actually out there. Zelensky is a Jew. That's the crazy part about this. That's what doesn't fucking make sense. Or he could just be a Jew in name only. And here's the thing. Zelensky might actually be innocent in all this. I don't know. No, there's no way. There's no way. That or Zelensky got handed a government from his predecessor where these deals had already been made and it just kind of went unnoticed. I don't know. Zelensky's a political pawn? Oh, yeah. Absolutely he is. Absolutely he is. Trying to find it. Maybe it's in the meme chat. I'm not sure. It's these weird things, man. Zelensky jailed his rival. Was it him or was it the one before him? I think it was him. Yeah. Here's the other thing. What pulled us out of the Great Depression? Mutombo, possibly. He could possibly expose those secrets. But nobody's going to listen because Putin's already been demonized by the entire world. They're going to say he's making it up. So it won't matter what he says. But what's the one thing that pulled us out of the Great Depression? World War II. We had a Great Depression. We have massive inflation right now. Getting America going back to work, supporting the war movement and shit like that. Inflation goes down. If Biden can manipulate the press to where they play upon the emotions of the American people, and we give in to this, and we say, yes, commit American troops, because right now they're reporting heavily on he's shelling civilians, which he is. That's why Putin's fucking up. He's giving them ammunition. Innocent civilians are being killed. Women, children, things such as that spin. And I'm not saying they're not, but they're really focusing on that. Shit, I'm surprised they haven't tried to throw a fucking dead body in camera just to prove it. And we play upon the emotions of the American people. And then, by and large, and the American populace can change on a dime, and we start supporting the war effort. Biden sends troops over. We secure it. We make it all happy. Everything is established. Everything stays the same. There's nothing to be exposed. It's just a possibility. I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't know. I just know there's just so much misinformation going on right now, and they're essentially, they're wagging the dog, man. This is not so far-fetched. This is not like in the realm of conspiracy theorism. Like this is like all the political shit you see in the movies about how corrupted go, like House of Cards and shit. Like this is it. I don't know, man. All I'm doing is I'm just putting the information out there. You can make up your own mind. At least, if anything, it gives you a different perspective to consider. Because like this dude says, the media loves to manipulate what people think of Putin. But here's the other part. Putin has done a lot of shit that deserves scrutiny. So it's kind of like, but yeah. I don't know. Hard to tell. That's where we're at. I haven't seen this. John.
All right. Am I on here? Oh, okay, great. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Uncommon Core lecture, the causes and consequences of the Ukraine crisis. My name is Michael Volchak. I attended the university
back in 2014.
from 1986 to 1991. I got a bachelor's in political science and a master's in international relations. Professor Mearsheimer was a tremendous influence on my life.
I've never listened to this yet.
Completely revolutionizing my worldview, changed how I looked at international relations, politics, just everything. In fact, he was such a big influence on my life that, that when I went home for the summer between one of the school years, leaving my college girlfriend here, she gave me a little keepsake picture book, and she said, here, to remember the people you love. And inside was a picture of her on the right and a picture of Professor Mearsheimer on the left. That's a true story. When I was here, the two biggest things that for me were military affairs and the Model United Nations of the University of Chicago, the student organization that I co-founded in 1988. And at that time, I discovered that you need a faculty advisor in order to have a registered student organization. So, of course, I thought for about 2 seconds.
I've never listened to this guy.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction. Thanks all for coming out to hear me talk. The subject I want to talk about is the causes and consequences of the Ukraine crisis, which of course has been in the news in a really big way since February 2014.
This is June 4, 2015.
There was a big story on the civil war in eastern Ukraine in the newspapers this morning. The outline I'd like to follow is I'd just like to make a number of preliminary comments to give you some background on this crisis. Then I'd like to give you my thinking on what caused the crisis. Then tell you why I think the conventional wisdom is wrong. Talk a little bit about the West's response so far to the crisis, which is just, in my opinion, making a bad situation worse. And tell you what I think should be done. And then finally wrap up with some discussion of the consequences. So let me start with some preliminary comments. First, with regard to America's core strategic interests. For me, core strategic interests are areas of the world where you're willing to fight and die. And in my opinion, outside of the Western Hemisphere, which is of enormous strategic importance to us, there are only 3 areas of the world that really matter. 1 is Europe, 2 is Northeast Asia, and 3 is the Persian Gulf. And it's very important to understand that since this country got its independence in 1783, Europe has been the most important area of the world.
Yeah.
Even though the Japanese attacked us at Pearl Harbor, we had a Europe first policy going into the war, and we had a Europe first policy throughout the war. And it's in large part because the great powers in Europe are more important than the great powers in Northeast Asia over time. And of course, the Persian Gulf was an important area because that's where the oil is, and oil is a critical resource that matters greatly in the international system. So those are the 3 most important areas outside the Western Hemisphere. And again, since the beginning of this country, Europe has been number 1. You want to understand that we're undergoing a fundamental shift of great importance. Asia, because of the rise of China, is going to be the most important area of the world for the United States. The Persian Gulf, because it's inextricably linked with Asia, oil flowing to India, oil flowing to China, the Persian Gulf will be number 2. And Europe will be a distant 3. We're basically leaving Europe in the rearview mirror. And of course, you want to keep this in mind because the Ukraine crisis is in Europe and it involves NATO. Just how to think about the geography of Europe. This is a simple, if not simplistic, way of thinking about it. But here's a map. You can see where Ukraine is. You can see where Poland is. You can see where Russia is. The way I think about European security is there's France, Germany, Poland, Ukraine, and Russia. Of course, we're moving from west to east. These are the big kahunas. These are the big countries that matter. And of course, the 2 countries that matter the most historically are Germany and Russia, or for most of the 20th century, Germany and the Soviet Union. And I put them in red because, as you well know...
Let's pause this real quick, ladies and gentlemen. Just look at this map right here, okay? If anything, just look at this map. Ukraine. Right on the border of Russia. We put missiles there. Ain't shit Russia can do. Put nukes. What if we put nukes there? There wouldn't be a place in Russia that we couldn't fucking obliterate. No wonder Putin was pissed. Exactly. All the assets you can stage at their front door. Absolutely. It's crazy.
Both Germany and the Soviet Union fought bitter wars in Poland, in Ukraine, and we could add in Belarus as well, if need be. But as we go along here, you want to keep in mind that Ukraine is right next to Russia, and Poland is right next to Ukraine. And then out further west is Germany and France. Take this a step further. This is the ethnic breakdown of Ukraine. I'm going to show you a number of maps, all of which are designed to show you that Ukraine is a badly divided country, and what's taking place inside Ukraine today is in good part a civil war. And to that extent, it doesn't have that much to do with what the Russians or the West are doing there. And as you can see in red are mostly Ukrainian-speaking people. And then as you move further east, you're talking about lots of Russians and certainly lots of Russian speakers. This is the Ukraine election of 2004. This is the election in the wake of the famous Orange Revolution, which I'll talk more about. As you can see, the country is badly divided between the East and the West. The Russian speakers in the East and the Ukrainian speakers in the West. This is the 2010 election, which resulted in Yanukovych getting elected. I'll talk about President Yanukovych as we go along. He was elected in 2010. And you can see there the voting patterns in the 2010 election look a lot like the voting patterns in the 2004 election. And then these are two recent surveys that came out from the International Republican Institute, that's here in the United States. This one says, if Ukraine could enter only one international economic union, which of the following should it be? And of course, the blue is the EU, and the...
Guys, I know that you can fire a missile and hit pretty much anywhere in the world at this point. I realize that. But you also understand, where did we go before we pushed to Iraq? Kuwait. Kuwait was pro-America. You have a staging zone, a staging area. Ukraine would be the exact same thing. Ukraine would be the exact same thing, a staging area right there on the border. And not just nukes. Anything else we wanted.
Light blue is the customs union, or actually the red is the customs union of Russia, Belarus, and Kazakhstan.
Yeah, Ukraine was part of the USSR prior to 91.
The cities up at the top are in western Ukraine, and the cities down on the bottom are in eastern Ukraine. So you can see very clearly that people in the West would like to join the EU. People in the East have little interest in joining the EU. Those are the EU numbers. Here are the NATO numbers. I mean, these two charts look virtually the same. But
here's
all
my
this
Twitter,
tells
guys.
you
Go follow my Twitter.
Have a badly divided country. And the conflict
where I
between
announce
the
all my
West
streams
and
and stuff on
Russia
his Twitter.
over Ukraine is played out in the context of this situation. This is a simple little view graph that shows Europe's dependent on Russian gas. It's quite clear from that view graph that many of the countries...
Let's pause that. Germany is 39%. This is also back in 2015. Czech Republic, 78%. Slovakia, all of it. Ukraine, 72%. Belarus, 100%. No wonder Belarus. Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Finland, all on 100% fight. Jesus. Even Italy, 27%. Britain's independent. Spain, Portugal, independent.
In Eastern Europe and even countries like Germany are heavily dependent on Russian natural gas. And of course, that gives the Russians lots of political leverage in this crisis, and it makes it very difficult for us.
Even Turkey, damn.
To put pressure on the Russians. Okay, those are just a number of preliminary comments I wanted to throw out just to set this up. Let's talk about the causes of the conflict. I think if you're going to talk about the causes of the conflict, you have to come at it from three different perspectives. First of all, you have to ask, what are the deep causes of the crisis? What are the structural factors that underpin this conflict? Then you have to talk about the precipitating causes, because the crisis broke out on February 22nd, 2014. Things were not terrible until February 22nd, 2014. And that's when everything went to hell in a handbasket. And the question is, what caused it then? If you focus on deep causes, it can't tell you why something happened in February 2014, but the precipitating causes are designed to get at that. And then what we want to talk about is the Russian reaction, why the Russians did what they did. regard to Crimea, with regard to eastern Ukraine. We want to talk about exactly what they did and then why they did it. So let's start with the deep causes. My argument is that the West is principally responsible for this mess, not the Russians. This, of course, is not the conventional wisdom in the United States. And in fact, except for Steve Cohen, who's now at Princeton, now at NYU, he used to be at Princeton, Henry Kissinger, and maybe a handful of other people, there are not many people who agree with me. But I think the facts are quite clear on this, that the West is responsible. And my aim is that the main deep causes, the aim of the United States and its European allies, to peel Ukraine away from Russia's orbit and incorporate it into the West. Our basic goal has been to make Ukraine a Western bulwark on Russia's border.
Yep.
And Russia says, this ain't happening, period, end of story. And we will do everything we can to make sure it does not happen. That's the deep cause. Now, take it a step further. There are three key elements in our strategy. The first is NATO expansion.
Thank you,
and in many ways, the most important.
NATO
I'll
expansion.
talk in some detail about that.
Trying to bully Russia. But
as you all know, since the Cold War ended, starting with the Clinton administration, we have been moving NATO eastward toward Russia's border. And the Russians have said, this is an absolute no-no. And I'll walk you through the story in a minute. Second is EU expansion. EU expansion is all about integrating Ukraine economically into the West, the way we are in the process of integrating Poland, the Czech Republic, Slovakia, the Baltic states into the West. And of course, we're doing that with NATO as well. These are two sets of institutions, NATO, military institution, the EU, an economic institution. And the idea, again, is to take Ukraine, peel it away from Russia, and make it part of the West. The third part of the story is fostering an orange revolution. This is all about promoting democracy in Ukraine and in other places. As you all know, the United States runs around the world trying to topple regimes and put in their place democratically elected regimes. And for almost all of you, me included, it's hard to be against promoting democracy. We all love democracy. But if you're Vladimir Putin, or if you're part of the leadership in Beijing, when the United States talks about democracy promotion, that means toppling your regime. And you won't be surprised to hear this.
No, wait, pave way, JDM. It's a good question. It's good. You said, but why is NATO expansion bullying Russia? I mean, the literal reason why these former Warsaw Pact nations wanted to join NATO is because Russia had been a giant asshole. This is true. But don't forget, in 91, the Soviet Union broke. Ukraine went rogue, and Ukraine had all of Russia's nukes inside of it. So an agreement for them to give them back to Russia to be dismantled was that they wanted UN protection. So this doesn't really have anything to do with that treaty. It has nothing to do with it. That's the thing. So it's kind of like this treaty was made, and who was a part of that treaty? US, Europe, and I forget who else it was. 3 countries, and US was damn sure involved. Think about it. This was never about the treaty.
They don't like that in Beijing, and they don't like that in Moscow. Right? They do not like that. Right? The Chinese believe that we're behind the protests in Hong Kong. You go to Beijing and you talk to Chinese elites, the idea that we're promoting democracy around the world, and especially in East Asia, just drives them crazy because they think they're in the crosshairs. And you know what? They are in the crosshairs. Because our basic strategy is to topple regimes all over the world, not simply because we like democracy, but because we believe that whoever gets elected will be pro-Western.
Bingo.
So we're killing 2 birds with 1 stone.
Yep.
We're promoting democracy and getting leaders who are pro-American. But again, you can see the strategy here: NATO expansion, EU expansion, and promoting democracy. Say a bit more about NATO expansion because it's so important. NATO expansion took place in 2 tranches The first one was in 1999. That's when you get Poland, the Czech Republic, and Hungary incorporated into NATO. The second big tranche was in 2004. And that's when the Baltic states, you can see Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania up top, Romania, Bulgaria, these are the light brown countries. That's the second tranche of NATO expansion. Now, the Soviets made it clear from the mid-1990s they were adamantly opposed to NATO expansion. But number one, they were too weak to do anything about it. And two, it didn't involve the states that were right on their border. I mean, there's no question, as you can see from the map, that Latvia and Estonia are on Russia's border, and Lithuania as well, if you want to include that little enclave between Poland and Lithuania. But the fact is, these were very small states. It was early in the game, and the Russians were willing to live with it. But then the big trouble starts, and it comes in the famous Bucharest summit, NATO's Bucharest summit in April 2008, where at the end of the summit, a declaration is issued which says, NATO welcomes Ukraine's and Georgia's Euro-Atlantic aspirations for membership in NATO. We agreed today that these countries will become members of NATO.
Well, don't forget, NATO is basically saying you're in the cool kids club. It's just more of us than them, established after World War II, essentially to prevent any type of one single country ganging upon anybody else. Excuse me. So if we can bring these people into the folds of NATO, that the U.S. is, and don't forget, when we say NATO, NATO has 40,000 troops. Okay, 40,000 troops in the NATO army, military. Who do you think they're putting at the spearhead of every single NATO-based operation in regards of funding, equipment, and boots? Who do you think? You think these smaller countries are committing more? Fuck no, it's going to be the U.S. The U.S. will spearhead any NATO operation. So if we can get Ukraine into NATO and we are spearheading NATO, we've just protected Ukraine. And if Russia tries to fuck with them, the entire world goes after Russia. And meanwhile, we basically just done what the Soviet Union tried to do to us in the Cuban Missile Crisis. It's fucking sickening, dude. It's sickening.
The Soviets, the Russians made this perfectly clear. This was unacceptable. Russia's deputy foreign minister said, Georgia's and Ukraine's membership in the alliance is a huge strategic mistake, which will have most serious consequences for pan-European security. Putin himself said, Georgia and Ukraine becoming part of NATO is a direct threat to Russia.
Ukraine on the west, Georgia on the south.
War between Russia and Georgia in August 2008. That war was a consequence of this, because the Georgians thought we were sending them a signal that they could get uppity with the Russians.
Bingo.
And we would back them because they were going to become part of NATO. That's not what happened. And you know what happened. The Russians clobbered the Georgians. And Georgia is in deep trouble today because it thought it could become part of NATO. So you want to remember that April 2008 summit, very important. That declaration, very important. And then what happens is you have a war. So those are the deep causes, those three strategies.
Now here's the fucked up part about this, ladies and gentlemen. Here's the fucked up part about what we went over tonight. I'm not a journalist. I'm not a CNN or Fox News correspondent. But you can't tell me, and I'm lazy when it comes to research for the most part. Like, I have to be really interested in a subject to give it some really good research. Why the fuck am I figuring this out and seeing this in our mainstream media, specifically Fox and the rest of them that are pro-right, pro-America? Why are they not calling this out? Why is Fox silent on this? Number one, Fox is owned by a liberal. I don't have an answer to this. I can't explain it. There's got to be a reason. Fox people are going to dig for, Fox is just like CNN. They will dig through 30 or 40 years worth of tweets, if Twitter existed for that long, to find the one shred that they can use to cancel somebody, because the right does cancel the left. Let's not even split hairs on that one. Fox will do the same thing. So you're telling me, as recently as 2014, all these events, that many of which I think the people that still worked at Fox probably experienced and reported on, are quiet? I mean, was Tucker... I don't watch Tucker Carlson. Was he saying this in the beginning? If he was, good for him. But I do remember seeing that Tucker was talking about how he was pro-Russia. Or they were accusing Tucker of being pro-Russia. That's not what he said, though, I think. It's crazy. It's freaking crazy. Yeah.
NATO expansion, EU expansion, and promoting democracy.
Yeah. Real quick, though. It's funny somebody talked about this, or somebody said this in the comments. Right now, if you say that you are pro-Russia, and I'm not saying that I am, but I'm saying if you are pro-Russia, you are looked at as being a racist. Not realistically. But the comparison of the accusation, the charges levied against that, are the same as if they're calling you a racist. I mean, if you really consider it, ladies and gentlemen, can you blame Russia? Saying, if you're going to try and take Ukraine and put your fucking people here, I'm going to take Ukraine and you can't stop me. And then you've got nowhere to go. Except maybe Poland. But my, now the other smaller countries, I think Poland and Finland, are now trying to apply to become part of NATO. Jesus. It's nuts. It's nuts.
What about the precipitating cause? The key events leading up to the coup.
Oh, Poland isn't. Wait, Poland isn't NATO? I thought they weren't. There were other two countries they talked about. Oh, I think you're right. I think Poland is. Yeah, Poland is. I'm sorry. Who was it? It was Finland and... Was it Sweden? Was it Finland and Sweden? Yeah, it was Sweden. My bad. But even still, the point still stands. Smaller countries are getting involved in this, saying we want protection. Dude, it's almost like, if you think about it, and this is the crazy part, this is like Godfather playing out on the big scene. It's like, hey, you want some protection from, I got a couple friends, a couple countries over here. They got some fucking things called nukes. So here's what you got to do. You want to come join our club so these big cops don't hustle you? You got to pay for our protection. You know what it costs you? We'll talk about that later. A lot of fucking money. You're pro-democracy, right? You're pro-Western. You like America. You good? The Yankee Doodle fucks. You with us? All right, cool. We'll protect you. It's crazy.
Coup of February 22nd, 2014, that's of enormous importance. That's what really throws the crisis into gear. Just think about that word, coup. Orange Revolution, promoting democracy, the coup.
What the fuck did I chew?
2014. So the question is, what causes the coup? It all starts in November of 2013. At that point, President Yanukovych, who's the head of Ukraine, is negotiating with the EU to form an association agreement that brings the EU and Ukraine much closer together. It's a step in the direction of incorporating Ukraine into the European Union, or to put it in slightly different terms, incorporating Ukraine into the West. The Russians make it clear that this is unacceptable. Russians are willing to do a deal that involves the EU, Russia, the IMF, and Ukraine. But the idea that Ukraine is going to do a deal exclusively with the EU and the Russians are going to be left out in the cold is not something that Putin is willing to countenance. He puts significant pressure on the Ukrainians. He offers them a terrific deal. And as you can imagine, the EU is not offering Ukraine a particularly good deal, because you know how much corruption there is in Ukraine. And the EU wants Ukraine to eliminate that corruption, which the Ukrainians really don't want to do. So what Putin does is not only make it clear that that deal is not going to happen, but he offers a sweetheart deal of his own. So Yanukovych, on November 21st, says no to the EU. This leads to a series of protests. The Ukrainian government, truth be told, under Yanukovych, overreacts to the protests, which causes them to spiral out of control. And in January of 2014, you can see there, January 22nd, 2014, you have your first 2 deaths in the protests. These are the Maidan protests. And then in the February 18th through February 20th time period, lots of people die. It's really messy. And what happens is that a number of European foreign ministers, the German foreign minister, French foreign minister, they fly to Kiev, and a deal is worked out to have elections that will, in effect, remove Yanukovych from power. But the protesters refuse to accept the deal. And there are significant fascist elements among the protesters who are armed, right? There's killing on the Maidan. And as a result, Yanukovych flees for his life to Russia. And this all happens on February 22nd. And,
so pro-Russian president.
I'm sorry. One of the problems with this lectern is you can't see. I'm sorry, that's the slide that has all the key events. Oh, gosh. Sorry. I have 2 slides up here, so I lost track of the fact. So here are the key events after the coup. On February 23rd, Parliament votes to repeal minority language laws in the East. This is basically the Russian language. And then on February 27th, Russian units begin seizing checkpoints in the Crimea. On the 28th, additional Russian forces begin moving into the Crimea. The Russians didn't conquer or invade Crimea. Excuse me, the Russians didn't invade Crimea. They were already there because they had a leasing agreement. There's a naval base at Sevastopol, and the Russians were leasing that naval base from Ukraine. So they had military forces there. So when it says Russian units begin seizing checkpoints on the 27th, those were Russian units that were already there. Then additional Russian forces begin moving in on the 28th. And then on the 6th, the 16th, and the 18th, you have a scenario, you have a handful of events that lead to Russia incorporating Crimea. And then, of course, shortly after that, conflict breaks out in eastern Ukraine. And although we do not have a lot of hard evidence that the Russians are physically involved in eastern Ukraine, I think it's quite clear that they are physically involved, that there are Russian troops there. How many is very hard to tell from the outside. I think it's very clear that the Russian government is going to great lengths to make sure that those pro-Russian forces in eastern Ukraine are capable of maintaining a certain amount of independence. And I'll talk more about this in a second. Okay, understanding the Russian response. What is the Russian response? 2 parts. First is they took Crimea and they're not giving it back. Crimea is gone. Second is what they're doing is not trying to conquer Ukraine. There are many people who say the Russians are going to go on a rampage, they're going to try and reestablish the Soviet Union or a greater Russia, and so forth and so on. That's not going to happen. Putin is much too smart for that. You remember what happened when the Russians invaded Afghanistan? You remember what happened when we invaded Afghanistan? You remember what happened when we invaded Iraq? You remember what happened when the Israelis invaded southern Lebanon? You want to stay out of these places. In fact, if you really want to wreck Russia, what you should do is encourage it to try and conquer Ukraine. Putin, again, is much too smart to do that. What Putin is doing is he's basically in the process of wrecking Ukraine, and he's telling the West in very simple terms, you have two choices. You either back off, right, and we go back to the status quo ante before February 22nd, 2014, where Ukraine is a buffer state, or you continue to play these games where you try and take Ukraine and make it a Western bastion on our doorstep, in which case we'll wreck the country. And they are, of course, now in the process of wrecking it. Right? And they're going to keep this conflict going for as long as they have to. That's the basic game here. Again, two steps. One, took Crimea. No way they're going to ever let Crimea become a NATO base. And remember, the name of the game here is to make Ukraine part of NATO. Not happening. And they're not getting Crimea. We've taken Crimea, we're keeping it. Number one. And number two, you want a frozen conflict or you want to wreck Ukraine so that it can't become part of the West.
Exactly what they're doing now.
Two here is what motivates this. What motivates this is that Russia is a great power, and it has absolutely no interest in allowing the United States and its allies to take a big piece of real estate of great strategic importance on its western border and incorporate it into the West. This should be hardly surprising to the United States of America. As all of you know, we have a Monroe Doctrine. The Monroe Doctrine basically says that the Western Hemisphere is our backyard, and nobody from a distant region is allowed to move military forces into the Western Hemisphere. I can tell from looking at the audience that most of you are old enough to remember the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Thank you.
You remember how we went stark raving.
Thank you. I haven't even watched this video. Who called it? Who called it, ladies and gentlemen? Oh, my God. Hold on, I got to bask in this. I knew it. I fucking knew it. Oh, who called it? Can I get some eggplant in the chat, please? Can I get some eggplant in the chat? Damn. Bro. Yeah, the Monroe Doctrine is bullshit. You're right. Fucking unbelievable. Unfucking believable.
Been crazy at the idea of the Soviets putting military forces in Cuba. This is unacceptable. Nobody puts military forces in the Western Hemisphere. That's what the Monroe Doctrine is all about. Can you imagine 20 years from now a powerful China forming a military alliance with Canada and Mexico and moving Chinese military forces onto Canadian and Mexican soil, and us just standing there and saying, this is no problem. We're all 21st century people, and worrying about Chinese forces there is what 19th century people like Vladimir Putin worry about. Of course that's not going to happen. We're going to maintain the Monroe Doctrine with regard to China just as we did with the Soviet Union during the Cold War. So nobody should be surprised that the Russians were apoplectic about the idea of us putting Ukraine on the western side of the ledger. And by the way, they told us, I gave you the quotes, in the wake of the Bucharest summit. I told you what happened in August 2008 with the Georgia war. The precedents were there. The rhetoric was there. They told us. But we did not stop our efforts to make Ukraine part of the West.
Do you see now? And here's the thing. I didn't know all this. Like maybe 4 or 5 days ago. I didn't know all this. But I said it from day one. When we've been watching these streams together, I said it from day one. America does not need to get involved in this. This is not our war. Something about this stinks. I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it. But we should not be committing troops to a war that does not concern or involve us. I fucking called it. But Americans, it honestly astounds me. And I think it comes from a good place in their heart. You know, I can't condemn these people. I do think it comes from a good place in their heart. When I see veterans that I served with and things such as that, and people a bit older than me as well, when we come out of a 20-year war in the Middle East that ended horrifically, I mean, you compare it to the fall of Saigon. In 20 years, America's longest conflict, if you will, is over. And we lose 13 servicemen and women in the process. 86 billion left behind. And then we kind of lick our wounds. And we say, okay, it's finally over. And then not even 6 months later, Cuba starts acting up. The potential overthrow. And the first thing people in America scream for, we need to go help them out. Democracy. Democracy. No. Doesn't concern us. That's not our problem. That's not our issue. And then you see some sputterings around the Olympic time, the genocide in China. And then some people kind of saying, oh, America should take interest in no, because people don't want to fuck with China. Cuba's one thing. China? Fuck no. Absolutely not. That shit got squished real quick by the MSM. It's kind of funny, isn't it? It's kind of funny. The manipulation by the press to distort the truth, or not really distort, but just kind of cover up the history and instead focus on what happened here moving forward. Don't pay attention to what happened prior to 2014 and back, February 22nd of 2014. Don't pay any attention to that date move. Just go forward. Well, what happened? How did this president get elected? Well, what happened to the president before him? They basically violently overthrew the government. A pro-Russia Ukraine got overthrown for a pro-Western. What happened in 2014, like he just confirmed before, had happened in 2008 with Georgia. And I never understood that. I was like, why the fuck is Russia going after Georgia? Georgia thought they'd get protected and got their asses kicked. They provoked. Russia responded. But how do you remember? Remember the previous video we watched? How did the press manipulate it? Russia's the bad guy. No, they're not. They're saying stay the fuck off of our borders. Like, here's the thing. Like, if we wouldn't have done anything, if the EU had not fucked with anything, we'd be cool. We'd be cool. Georgia's left alone. There's no 2008 attempted attack on Russia. There's no 2014 coup. There's no 2022 fucking invasion. Nothing would have happened. Everything was just good. The world, I shouldn't say everything was good, but in regards to that dichotomy, everything was flowing. America and the EU bullied the fuck out of Russia by proxy of these other tiny fucking countries. It's crazy.
And the Russians responded. Was it surprising? For some reason, President Obama and virtually all of the elites in the West were surprised. I guess this is because they're 21st century people, right? And they think that balance of power politics doesn't matter anymore. If you think these people in Washington and most Americans are having trouble dealing with the Russians, you can't believe how much trouble we're going to have with the Chinese. I'm very popular in China. I go to China quite often. And I usually start my talks by saying, it's good to be back among my people. Because when I'm in China, I'm intellectually much more at home there than I am in Washington. Because in Beijing, much like in Moscow, you're dealing with 19th century people like me. Whereas in Washington, you're dealing with 21st century people. I think the Chinese are going to eat our lunch, right? Talk a bit about the conventional wisdom. Conventional wisdom is that Putin is the main cause of the crisis. Some say he's either crazy or irrational. Angela Merkel was making this argument for a while. He's bent on creating a greater Russia, and he bears marked resemblance to Adolf Hitler. Say a few words about each of these. I know a great deal about Adolf Hitler. I've written and I teach extensively on Nazi Germany's behavior in the 30s and during World War II. The idea that he bears any resemblance to Adolf Hitler is laughable in the extreme. It's hard to believe that serious people make that argument. The idea that he's bent on creating a greater Russia, I think if he could do it, he'd do it. He can't do it. Russia's a declining great power.
Thank you, Fidiso.
And as I said to you before, if they were to try and create a greater Russia by invading Ukraine And by invading the Baltic states, they'd be jumping into the briar patch. In fact, again, if you want to wreck Russia, what you should do is tell them to try and create a greater Russia. It will lead to no end of trouble. I think Putin is much too smart for that, and he is in the process of wrecking Ukraine. I want to make that clear. And he's wrecking Ukraine because he's basically saying to the West, you can't have it, and I'll wreck it before you take it.
Bingo. Bingo.
Is he crazy or irrational? I don't think so. I think he's very strategic. And I don't think he's the main cause of the crisis, as I said to you. Another set of arguments associated with the conventional wisdom. This is that the United States is a benign hegemon seeking to promote European stability, seeking to promote stability in Asia, all over the globe, and so forth and so on. There's some countries like Japan and Germany.
Evan Anderson, he says, I feel guilty. I admit I had a pure emotional response to all of this. It's very eye-opening. Dude, everybody did. Don't feel bad. Bro, you got nothing to feel bad for, man. Everybody was like this. You know, I just kind of felt like, something doesn't feel right. Something stinky. Something stinky about it. I got this weird fucking feeling. I don't know what it is. But, dude, you're not alone. You're not alone, dude. Everybody fell for this. Russia, the bad guy. Russia, the bad guy. Russia's basically just saying, you fuck with us, we're going to fucking destroy it. It's one of those, like, I'll take us all down. Yeah, I can share the link for you guys. Hold on.
Sure.
This is the link. This is Why is Ukraine the West's Fault, featuring John Mearsheimer. Here is the link. There's the link. You can go look it up for yourself. Go look it up for yourself. There's other videos in this series about the Great Delusion, some other people that I haven't listened to yet, so I don't know. It's interesting, right? I mean, he's basically just explaining it much more in depth than the previous gentleman, Stephen, did. It's just very interesting to me. And, you know, if I share this on Facebook and shit, even my big page, the Russian Jesus, wait a minute. Wait. The Russian collusion accusations. How did Trump play into this? How did Hillary play into this? The Steele dossier, all of this. Or was that something completely different, just involving Russia? It could have been. I don't know. I'm too tired to actually piece that one together. I don't know. I don't know. That's weird.
Poland, who view the United States as a benign hegemon. There are many countries out there who do not. Iran is one, China's another, and Russia's a third. They just don't see it that way. And because they don't see it that way, you should understand that when you take measures, you meaning the United States, that you think are going to be interpreted as benign, the other side will not see them that way. They will see them as threatening. This gets back to my point about democracy promotion. We believe democracy promotion is an unalloyed good, and we can't understand why people like Putin and the leaders in Beijing don't understand this, but they don't understand it. And if you don't recognize what other people think, you're incapable of putting yourself in their shoes, you're going to get yourself into a heck of a lot of trouble. And of course, that's...
Okay, I'm good, bro. I appreciate it. I'm good.
And then another argument is that Putin's behavior proves that it was wise to expand NATO eastward to try to include Ukraine and Georgia, right? What's very interesting is that there is no evidence that we thought Putin was aggressive before the crisis. There's no evidence that we thought that. There's no evidence that we were talking about expanding NATO because we had to contain the Russians. Because again, NATO expansion was driven by 21st century men and women. They believe balance of power politics is dead. That's what happened here. Do you understand? Putin is a 19th century man, right? He does view the world in balance of power in terms of balance of power politics, as do we when it comes to the Monroe Doctrine and the West. But in this case, in the case of Europe, we were thinking like
Ragnar, thank you for the $10 dono, man. Holy shit,
and we
thank you very
thought that
much.
we could just drive right up to his doorstep and it wouldn't matter.
Thank you for being you. Appreciate it, homie. Thank you so much.
We did not think that Russia was aggressive. What happened here is that after the crisis broke out on February 22nd, we then decided that Russia was aggressive. We then decided that Russia was bent on creating a greater Russia. It was after the fact. And by the way, this is why President Obama and virtually all of Washington was caught with their pants down when this crisis broke out after February 22nd, because they did not see it coming. Talk a little bit about our response. We're basically doubling down. We're getting tougher and tougher with the Russians. That's our strategy. And that's exactly what you'd expect if you're going to blame them, given that we're incapable of blaming ourselves because we never do anything wrong. You all know that. All the problems in the world are caused by everybody else.
You know, he says that, and if you really think about it, ladies and gentlemen, how have we been conditioned to think? How have we been programmed to think since we were little kids, especially down here? I grew up in the deep South, Texas. Pledge of Allegiance, prayer in school, yada, yada, yada. America's the best country, star-spangled freedom, red, white, and blue. America does no wrong. We're good, 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 good. And of course, you're going to teach your children that. You don't want to teach them the fact that your country sometimes is fucked up. And then we adopt that policy, that perspective, that frame of mind, and it sticks with us. And so then we progress into our rebellious teenage years. And we're not really thinking too much about world history, world economics. We don't care about taxes. We're just wanting to live and let live. But we still have this ideology in our head that we're the greatest country ever. We still say this, even today. And then we get into our 20s and our late 20s, and then just kind of like, we're still not paying attention for the most part. We're focusing on career. We're focusing on love interests, building our life, yada, yada, yada. And then you're going to hit your 30s, and you're going to start waking up. And you're going to start asking yourself certain questions, and you start looking at the news, and you start to kind of wonder about, like, wait. And this is just for me. It's like something's off here. You start learning about the history of what American involvement is in Vietnam. How Vietnam, we had no business being in there. It was to stop the spread of communism. Communism was a red herring. It wasn't about that. And it wasn't our position that we shouldn't have done that. Imagine Joe Biden announcing a war in Vietnam today to stop the spread of communism, the Red Scare. And what fueled this Red Scare? You had McCarthyism here in America, Senator McCarthy, of which it was dubbed after. McCarthy is sitting there putting America back in the mid 20th century into this panic frenzy of everyone's a commie, everyone's a commie. You're a commie, he's a commie, your neighbor could be a commie. Actors and actresses, singers, people were getting blacklisted from working. It was insane. Communism, the fear of communism, and I'm not saying communism is nothing to be feared, but the fear of the spread of it. And Mother Russia, fuck commies, all this other stuff. And that's what got us into Vietnam. In Vietnam, we lose over 50,000 men. We lost. The same politicians that sent us over there handcuffed us. Couldn't win. North Vietnam, after we pulled out, invade South Vietnam. It's over. And we get involved over and over and over. Just one of those things. But I think where we have to separate, I think that it is important for us to understand that when we say America was wrong, much like we see in today's society as far as BLM blaming contemporary white people for slavery, which we had no part in, the same type of thinking should be applied to where when we say America was the bad guy, this does not apply to us. This applies to higher up Washington elites that are perpetuating this. But most people, again, when we go into identity politics, specifically, when we say if you bash President Trump, diehard Republicans instantly feel attack on their identity and they are quick to defend him. The open eyes, the open mind's eye, if you will, the ears closed, the eyes shut. Now we go into defense mode. We're not gonna have conversations. It's just Trump good, you bad. I was like, wait a minute. There's some gray area here that we should discuss, and it's the same thing when regarding America and showcasing what America has fucked up in the past. Look at again the '80s war with Russia and Afghanistan. What was America's involvement in that? We funded the Muad'Din. We gave them weapons, and then where are we? Circa 2001, over there fighting. It's just interesting. It's very interesting. But to fast forward back to here, this was the EU and America's creation. Putin's not the bad guy in this one. He's not. I mean, he's not. Can you blame him? No, Putin's not the bad guy in this. How can you blame him? Putin is protecting his sovereignty in Russia. He's protecting Russian interests. Wouldn't America do the same in the Cuban Missile Crisis? So all of a sudden, what makes him, I'm not saying Putin's good, but he's not the bad guy here. Did y'all not just watch all of this? America tried taking Ukraine and pushing it into the fucking EU or doing deals with the EU. The same thing for Georgia. So America could strategically put people at that southern and eastern border of Russia. And they're saying no. Russia's like, if you do this, we're going to fuck you up. No one will have it. Russia did the same thing. Exactly. He literally just went over this. This was provoking Putin. This is Putin's response. So, if I call Putin the good guy, I shouldn't have said good guy. I just mean that I understand where he's coming from. Now, I'm not saying I agree with Putin. I'm not saying that I'm not rooting for Putin here. What I'm saying, though, is people calling for American involvement. No, this was America and EU's fuck up with Russia. Doesn't concern us. Yeah, I'm not over here fucking rooting for Putin. But at the same time, I understand why he's doing it. I get it. Because wouldn't America do the same? I mean, really think about this. What if Russia started saying, we're going to start strategically working deals with, let's just say, certain parts of Canada? I'm like, no, absolutely not. We don't want you over there. And then Russia, they go ahead and start doing it. And they start pushing Russian forces in there. Would we not say, you better fucking knock it off? It's very interesting to me. It's crazy. This doesn't involve the U.S. Does not involve us. This is the thing. Honestly, this is the EU's thing. You fucking, and then America get involved? Absolutely not. Abso-fucking-lutely not. It's just crazy to me. Putin was right to be mad, but wrong to terrorize Ukrainians. Guys, you are totally I'm not saying realistically that what's going on in Ukraine is a good thing. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying, though, is that I totally get why he's doing it. This is a byproduct of shit-ass fucking politics, of people vying for power, the West trying to manipulate and getting a foothold in the fucking Ukraine. If we would have just left it alone, this would not be happening. If the EU would have backed the fuck off of Ukraine, because Ukraine was volatile. He just went over this in the briefing. The Ukraine was volatile. Why are you fucking with it? You're justifying war, dude. Yes, this is justified in Putin's eyes. Like, how are you not getting this? Have you not just been sitting here and watching the entire series of fucking videos we just did? Did you not just watch this explanation? It makes perfect sense. It's crazy to me. You're justifying war, dude, bro. This is explaining why Putin's fucking attacking. Christ almighty. Do like people not listen? Do people in the chat not fucking listen? Or are you just bent on the fact that war is happening, ergo war equals bad, everything else out of that sphere, me not going to listen? What caused the war, bro? What caused the war? Jesus Christ. Man, Ukrainian people just want to be free from Russia. It's split. This is back in 2014. There are still Russian loyalists over there. But regardless if they do or don't, tell me though, why does this involve America? Because here's the thing. If you want to be part of Russia, cool. If you want to be part of Ukraine, if you want Ukraine to remain independent, cool. Why does this concern America? You're trying to get me to like justify or to condemn Russia versus Ukraine or Ukraine versus Russia. It's not like that. I'm simply putting out the playbook of like, this is why it's happening. And they're trying to draw American into it. Fuck no. Absolutely not. Thank you. There we go. Gamer. Did I say this in the wrong way? I said he's explaining from Putin's perspective why Putin would justify this war in his actions. Does that make sense to everybody? Because see a few people's like, that's an ill take, that's a stupid take, blah, blah, blah. Makes perfect fucking sense to me. That's odd. I mean, I don't know. Makes perfect fucking sense to me. Unless we had some people show up late in the chat and didn't watch the briefing. Which, in that point, it's not my fault. You're just fucking stupid. Makes perfect fucking sense to me. And people that are taking this as if I'm like trying to rooting for Putin are the same ones that are thinking line of when Trump fucking praised Putin's strategy as far as going in there as peacekeepers to basically pull out those freaking two towns that are pro-Russian loyalists. And Trump saying, it's fucking brilliant. We should do the same thing at the southern border, folks. And it's like, oh my God. Trump's praising Putin. It's like, no, he's not. He's just saying the tactics he used were fucking brilliant. Like, Jesus. That's nuts to me.
Welcome to the savages.
All right. Doc says, well, it does because when Ukraine wanted to get free from Russian influence, he invaded an independent country and take over aka Crimea. I understand that. But that was also back in 2008. Why? He literally just explained it. Have you not been watching this video?
Never by the
Watch.
United States.
Watch.
Because we're a benign hegemon. Well, if we're the good guys and they're the bad guys and they're misbehaving, they're bent on creating a greater Russia, oh my God, this is the 1930s all over again. Any sort of concession to Putin is Munich, October 1938. Can't do that. So what you do is you double down. You get tougher and tougher. Then this brings us to the question of whether we can succeed or not. My argument is you're playing a losing hand. Right? And the reason you're playing a losing hand is because this is a competition between economic considerations and security considerations. The basic mindset of people in the West is that you can punish the Russians economically and they'll throw their hands up. My argument is when security considerations are
Thank you for the 1100 bits, CZ. Appreciate that, too.
Interests are at stake, and there's no question, ladies and gentlemen, in Russia's case, this is a core strategic interest. Countries will suffer enormously before they throw their hands up. Right? So you can inflict a lot of pain on the Russians, and they're not going to quit. And they're not going to quit because Ukraine matters to them. And by the way, Ukraine doesn't matter to us.
That's why Putin built up his war chest.
Nobody calling for us to fight in Ukraine. Even John McCain, who up until recently has never seen a war he didn't want to fight, is not calling for using military force in Ukraine.
He was a rhino back then, too.
John McCain is saying is that Ukraine is not a vital strategic interest for the West. That's what he's saying.
Oh, God. Thank you, Zeph. Jesus, you nail on head, dude. Thank you. Zeph Firaranth, excuse me for mispronouncing that, says, This form of detailed explanation and realism, not based in sensationalism or emotion, is hard for many people to follow. It takes critical thought, something that is trained out of people these days. Dude, I could not agree with you more. I could not, because there are days I'm like, am I fucking stupid? Like, is it me? Am I wrong here? And then you kind of like, you sit there and you just go over the wheels start turning, the hamster's like on steroids in your mind, just going as fast as it can, like trying to think and piece this shit together. It's like, okay, let me break this shit apart again and try and piece it back together to make sure that the final product I have in my mind is accurate. And I do it over and over, and I'm just like, yeah, this is the outcome I keep coming to. So if somebody's saying, oh, it's a stupid fucking hot take, it's an L take, bruh, well then by all means correct me. But nobody seems to be able to do this. So it's kind of like, it's the fact that you can't is because you actually don't know the truth. You just don't like what he's saying. Because it doesn't necessarily make Putin as bad as the media is making him out to be. And you don't like that because you've been trained to hate Russia. You've been trained to hate Putin. And I've never said like Putin's like a good guy. Like, he's fucking ex-KGB. He's fucking ex-KGB. This guy's a fucking hitman. I mean, come on. But I understand. I get why he did it. Makes perfect sense to me.
It is a vital strategic interest for the Russians.
Exactly. I can't fight your point. I just don't like what you said. Exactly.
Putin, right. So in terms of the balance of resolve, it's all on their side. And I showed you that slide up there that depicted how much economic leverage the Russians have because of all that natural gas going westward. So we're playing a losing hand here. But let's assume that I'm wrong. Let's assume that we're playing a winning hand and that we are capable of backing Putin into a corner. And we're getting close to pushing him off a cliff. Is this good? You're talking about a country that's got thousands of nuclear weapons. And the only circumstance, really, under which states use nuclear weapons is when they're desperate, when they think their survival is at stake.
What did Putin just do? He put his nuclear program on like special alert. Yeah, sure, it's not bad. Who gives a shit if the bombs hit the shit ton of civilian city and not military bases? What the fuck are you talking about? Now you're just being sensationalist. Now you're just being a sensationalist. You're blaming Putin for responding what the EU and America created. You're mad at the wrong people. It's not just Putin. Like, you don't seem to see the point. And stop trying to fucking use that tactic of like, well, who cares about the women? Like, stop trying to fucking play on emotions, dude. That's the weakest fucking argument you can make. That's the weakest fucking argument you can make. That's ridiculous. Jesus Christ. Of course people are not for seeing women and children getting blown the fuck up. Like, what the hell are you talking about? Orange Lady says you're being obtuse. I'm sorry. I can't really take anybody seriously that doesn't even spell Y-O-U''RE. I'm sorry. I can't. That's interesting to me. All Russia is wanting are these buffer states. That's all they're wanting. Georgia and Ukraine. Leave them the fuck alone. That's all they want. We poked the fucking bear. So I guess you don't care about women, children being bombed. What kind of fucking argument is that? It sucks that that's what happens, but that's a byproduct of when elected leaders do dumb shit. So if you want to be mad at Putin, fine. I see that. It's justified. I get that. Your anger is completely justified, but it's also a little misdirected and misguided. It shouldn't be just Putin. It should be the fucking EU, and it should be specifically Obama and Biden. It's not just Putin. This is like the elites playing a game where everybody else is dying as a result. So those women and children that are dying over there, those are casualties of this fucking game of globalism that these guys are, global domination that they're fucking playing. That's all I'm saying. So when you get upset and say you're rooting for Putin, that's not what I'm saying. But I get where he's coming from. And here's the other thing. If you really think there isn't heavy amounts of money involved in this, it's crazy. So you say it's our fault that we just want it to be left alone and not be under Russia. Well, when you have a pro-Russian government, you've got the state of fucking Ukraine split like it was already in the briefing, pro-Russia, pro-Ukraine, And the pro-Russia president is trying to basically saying like we like Russia, and then he gets ousted, and then a pro-democracy president gets installed violently and illegally, and now we've got an American asset there, a way to fucking stage troops, new missiles, all this shit, and then Russia gets a little pissed off. I'm not trying to see what you're saying here. Like I'm failing to understand. Look, I'm not saying it's the Ukrainian people's fault. I'm saying it's your government's. Like, Christ. Why are you taking everything so fucking personal, dude? Maybe you should take a step back and chill the fuck out. Take some Delta 8. I know a guy. That's all I'm trying to say. The only reason I'm doing this is to try and educate you and show you that this shit right here, like you just admitted, you want to be left the fuck alone? As an American, I agree. I want to leave you the fuck alone. I don't want anything to do with you. You don't concern me. So we're cool there, bro. So I'm not sure what you're really upset about, quite honestly. You're mad that freaking Ukrainians are dying. I get that. No one's condoning that. But I'm saying if you're going to be mad at Putin, be mad at fucking everybody else. In fact, it's the Ukrainians that should be pissed off the most at fucking everything. That's nuts to me. That's fucking nuts to me. I don't understand that. Literally victim blaming in regards to what? In regards to what? Blaming the victim for what? The government that was literally just proven? Like, it's literally been showcased in these things repeatedly. So, where's the victim blaming? Are you referring to something else? Curious. Who's getting blamed here? I'm waiting. Yes, upstate trash. You know, oh Jesus, like dude, we have literally just been over this for the last hour. Are you just tuning in? Have you not been here? Ukrainians are fighting to maintain their sovereignty. Putin said explicitly he wants to restore the Soviet Union. Historically, they have never been a problem. I understand that, but why is he wanting to restore the Soviet Union? Will from Texas, are you serious? The video is wrong. One, it's a tactical strategic interest to the West due to oil, and two, did he not say that? Which video did you watch? Guys, am I taking to which videos have you watched? And then he says the Ukrainian people want to align themselves with the West for more economic freedom and control over their own resources. But it's also, it was proven it's divided. He showed you statistics. He showed you statistics of like it's split between Russian loyalists and Ukrainian separatists. Are we watching the same video? Am I taking stupid pills here? Am I taking stupid pills here? I'm fucking confused. I'm confused. Here's the thing. It's split, but they still voted for a West-friendly government, which they should be allowed to do. Voted in which election? The one where the pro-Russian government was violently overthrown illegally in a coup? That government that was installed through violent means? That also the West favored? Wink, wink, no shit? Dude, I'm kind of like... I'm sorry, dude. I'm at a loss with you. We've literally been over this video. You clearly weren't paying attention. There is nothing here I can do for you, man. All I can do is say here's this video.
So what
if you are so certain you're right, go watch this video. Like the rest of us in this chat have done for the last hour and some change. Here's the video. Go do your own research, dude. And I hate to say it. I'm actually doing the research for you. Here, go reference this. This is the video that we're watching. Go give it a read, and every historical analysis and fact that he brings up, go cross-reference it. Go look up these historical facts and see if they're not true. Congratulations, John. You've met a steam clam, my dude. You're right. You're right. All right. We're going to continue the video. I'm done with this guy. Yeah.
Putin in a situation where he's desperate. And if you go home and Google Putin and nuclear, really, under which states use nuclear weapons, is when they're desperate, when they think their survival is at stake. So what you're talking about is putting Putin in a situation where he's desperate. And if you go home and Google Putin and nuclear, really, under which states use nuclear weapons, is when they're desperate, when they think their survival is at stake. So what you're talking about is putting Putin in a situation where he's desperate. And if you go home and Google Putin and nuclear, really, under which states use nuclear weapons, is when they're desperate, when they think their survival is at stake. So what you're talking about is putting Putin in a situation where he's desperate. And if you go home and Google Putin and nuclear, really, under which states use nuclear weapons, is when they're desperate, when they think their survival is at stake. So what you're talking about is putting Putin in a situation where he's desperate. And if you go home and Google Putin and nuclear, really, under which strategic interests.
Sorry about that.
He's got thousands of nuclear weapons. So you're putting yourself in a position, right? You're putting 2 years, right? Because he's making it clear.
Refresh. This thing is the internet issue.
Is when they're desperate.
Sorry about that, guys.
When they think their survival is at stake. So what you're talking about is putting Putin in a situation where he's desperate. And if you go home and Google Putin and nuclear brinksmanship, you'll be reading all the articles that come up for the next 2 years, right? Because he's making it clear that you're fooling around with his core strategic interests.
B-Dub, we're talking about
he's got thousands of nuclear weapons.
the 2014 coup.
So you're putting yourself in
Zelensky wasn't the president that was violently installed.
Putting yourself in a position.
Wrong president, dude.
Where you're willing to risk a possible nuclear war over a piece of real estate, Ukraine, that is not of vital strategic interest to the United States. Again, it's not of vital strategic interest to us. By the way, and this will be my final point on this, what's truly amazing about all of this is that we were talking about incorporating Ukraine into NATO when we have now acknowledged by not taking military action over Ukraine that it's not a vital strategic interest. You understand that when you incorporate Ukraine into NATO, you're giving them an Article 5 guarantee, which says you'll come to their defense if they're attacked. You only give Article 5 guarantees to countries that are of vital strategic interest, like Germany during the Cold War. What were we doing? Thinking about giving an Article 5 guarantee to a country that's not a vital strategic interest. It just shows you how discombobulated American foreign policy is these days. And of course, the Ukraine crisis is just one of many messes that we've made. As you know, we have the might.
Here's the other thing about, guys. Here's something else to caveat off of this, what we just saw in recent days. Look what the world economic, everybody economically has done to Russia. Banks have frozen their shit. The entire world just literally turned on Russia from the provocation of the EU and America. Assets frozen. Biden said last night in the State of the Union, no Russian flights coming in. They're canceling Russian games. They're pouring out Russian vodka, all this stuff. Sanctions like a motherfucker. The entire world united. Now, what happens when they do that on America? Don't think for a second they won't. Don't think for a second. That whole NATO shit, it's scary. It's fucking scary. America doesn't need it. Bad news, man.
Just touch in reverse. There's nothing that we do that doesn't go south. Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Ukraine, I could go on. So the point I'm making to you is I do not think that this is going to work.
Well, the point is, yeah, think about it. Russia knew it was coming. They invaded anyway. Remember we talked about in the show the other day how Putin had a war chest of like $600 billion he'd set aside or something like that? Putin knew this would happen. Because Obama tried to slap sanctions on him when he basically went to war with Georgia, even though Georgia provoked it. There's food for thought, man.
But if it does work, I'm not sure it's a good thing. I had some quotes from the New York Times that really capture what we're doing. I won't leave them up there, but they make it very clear that we're playing hardball with the Russians. This was a Times piece last year that gave a good synoptic version of the Obama administration's thinking on how to deal with this crisis. Now, what should be done? My view is we should create a neutral Ukraine, which is a buffer state between NATO and Russia. Basically, what I'm talking about is going back to the status quo ante, before we got this foolish idea in our head that we could peel Ukraine away.
And I haven't watched this video. Did I not just say that? Did I not just say, I have not watched this video. Did I not just say that? It needs to go back to how it was. Leave Ukraine as the buffer. Leave Georgia the fuck alone. Those are the buffers, fine. Because as long as they're happy, that's not our fucking problem. Did I not just say that, guys? I called it. I 100% think that would work, because then we wouldn't have Russia invading.
Away from Russia and
what do I know?
Make it part of NATO, make it part of the EU, make it more generally part of the West. We should work to create a situation where Ukraine is neutral, and it's a buffer state. Just to go back to my simple or simplistic graphic, depending on your views, right? This is how I think about European security. This is what you want. You want NATO to include France, Germany, and Poland. You want Ukraine as a buffer state, and then you want Russia on the eastern.
Wait, on YouTube. So did everyone who ever came in contact with the communist Russians provoke it? What kind of fallacy is that? What are you talking about? Where did anybody say that? We gave 2 historical examples that were in the freaking late 20th century. Are you kidding me? And now you're saying, well, oh, so I guess everybody, like, no, now you're just trying to paint me as if like I'm pro-Russia, and I'm not. That's an outlandish fucking garbage fallacy that you just tried to promote. That's ridiculous. That is rooted in like sensationalism as well. You know that's a damn lie. You know I never said that. We're talking about this instance. So way to try and freaking paint the parameters as if I'm trying to say like, actually, everyone. It's not what I'm saying whatsoever. You're just not fucking listening. But look, I'm sorry. I can't fix fucking retarded. That's something you got to take medication for.
Flank of that border state. And this is not what you want. You do not want a divided Ukraine where Western Ukraine is in NATO, Eastern Ukraine is in Russia, and the Russians and the Americans, who hate each other at that point, are eyeball to eyeball on the Dnieper River. Not a good idea. How do you get to this end? Very simple. Explicitly abandon NATO expansion. By the way, NATO expansion is dead. I've talked to countless policymakers who say this. It's dead. But what we have to do is explicitly abandon it. Say it is not happening. We have to fashion an economic rescue plan for Ukraine that includes Russia, the IMF, and the EU.
Okay, I didn't call that part.
This, of course, is what Putin wanted to do in 2013, and the EU said no, foolishly. We want to go to great lengths to guarantee minority rights, especially language rights in Ukraine. This gets back to those maps that I was putting up that show that this is in very important ways a civil war, and what we have to do
Peckerson, it's not being literal.
Conflict inside Ukraine. We have to give the people in eastern Ukraine a lot of autonomy, and we definitely have to protect minority rights. Are we going to do any of this? No. And I'll talk more about that in a second. Consequences, and this is my last slide. Will there be a new Cold War? No. Russia is not the Soviet Union, and as I said to you before, we have a potential peer competitor on the horizon who could be of proportions we've never seen before. The Chinese threat, once it materializes...
God dang! This dude is on... This was made back in 2015. This dude is on the money. Now, he did get the wrong thing as far as potential Cold War and then NATO expansion. That's not true because it's happening. It's coming. And then he's talking about it's going to be the Chinese. That's interesting.
Welcome to the Savage.
Boston sports fan, thank you for the subs on Twitch, homie. I definitely appreciate that, man. Yeah, Yaretz Blake, that's crazy. He could give speeches today, and it would still be as applicable. Like, isn't that nuts? It's fucking crazy. These are guys that have studied Russia. They've studied Russia.
It's going to be something like we've never seen. We're going to have our hands full in Asia. Europe is not going to matter. And Russia is going to be with us. The balancing coalition against China is going to be South Korea, Japan, Vietnam, Taiwan, Singapore, India, and Russia. The Russians will be with us. And that's another reason this whole policy is so stupid. Right? What we're effectively doing is driving the Russians into the arms of the Chinese. There's a great strategy. We need the Russians on Iran. We need the Russians on Iran. We drive the Russians closer to the Iranians. You saw where they just sold the Iranians S-300 anti-aircraft missiles. We need the Russians on Syria. We need the Russians.
Do you understand now the butterfly effect worldwide when you make any kind of international position known? How much that can essentially move on or in the future come back to haunt us. One conflict that is created over here has ramifications in another part of the world years down the road sometimes. It's not all so black and white. There are economic outcomes, secondary and tertiary effects that have to be considered in every political movement we make on the international stage. And I don't think people realize that. Oh, China is the enemy. And that has nothing to do with Trump. China is the enemy. But China's doing it smart. No, that's not me saying China's good, guy. Okay, that's not what I'm saying. So calm the fuck down. They're doing it smart. They're letting Russia, all this blow up. And China's fucking making bank. We're in debt to China. These guys are just sitting back, collecting fucking money, letting everybody else do their thing. Where has China been at on this whole conflict? In the UN, I think they abstained. They didn't want to vote. They're not picking a side. They're playing neutral. Bro, and they're kind of like silent over there in the corner. Well, we're fucking blowing all over. It's like it's watching two armies fight, and they're right over there over the hill, and the leader's saying, no. Let them kill each other. And then once the winner is there, he's going to be in his most weakened state, and then we're going to attack. Economically, China is fucking killing it. They're killing it. China, when we left guys, this just happened last year. As soon as we pull out of Afghanistan, who goes in there and starts brokering deals for natural resources, precious metals? This is proven. Who was it? It was fucking China. Weird. China understands they don't have to expand the physical empire. They've got an economic empire, and they are fucking just destroying the world. And it makes perfect sense. The more debt that you hold, the more powerful you become. These guys they know what the fuck they're doing. It's crazy to me. It's fucking crazy.
Russians on all sorts of issues. We don't need to have a fight with the Russians now. We're not going to have a Cold War. Will the United States still pivot to Asia? Yes. All we need is one big crisis out there. It's coming, probably in the South China Sea sooner rather than later, if you've been reading the newspapers. And once that happens, we will focus laser-like on Asia, because that's a peer competitor. Russia is not a peer competitor. What are the implications for NATO? This gets back to the previous question. I think that NATO is in serious trouble and will disappear as a functioning alliance over time, in large part because I think we're going to pivot to Asia. What are the implications of all this for our Asian allies? It's a very interesting question. I was in Japan in December of 2014, and the Japanese, like a lot of people in Asia, number one, wonder whether we're going to be there for them, right? Because they see us causing trouble over Ukraine. They see us picking a fight with ISIS. And they say if the United States is fighting ISIS, dealing with the Russians over Ukraine, are they going to be able to pivot to Asia? And then furthermore, they say, even if the United States does pivot, can we trust them? If you look at how this gang operates in Washington, it does look like the gang that can't shoot straight. Do we want to depend on them? If you're Japanese and you're depending on the American security umbrella, especially the American nuclear umbrella, don't you scratch your head and say, can I rely on Washington in a crunch with the Chinese over the Senkaku or Diablo?
Sorry if I was breathing the mic. I'm sorry.
Not clear.
I'm trying to educate this person
this
on.
has not been good for our relations with our Asian allies.
Yeah, Shannon.
What are the
100%.
implications for Iran and Syria?
Like, yeah, she makes a really good point. She talks about how while Chinese kids learn hard math at young ages, we're more concerned about gender and hurtful words. I went over to Greece. I was on leave from Afghanistan. I think it was back in 2011 or 2012. I went to actually go visit Greece. I've always loved Greek mythology. I've always loved the history of Greece, the military, the mythology. It's all just so romantic to me. I think it's just a great, interesting period of time to study. Birthplace of Western philosophy and all the other stuff. But anyway, over there in Greece, I don't know if y'all knew this, but in Greece, I think by the time they're in their first, second grade, they're already learning their third language. They're already learning their third fucking language. Here in America, we're raising idiots. We're more concerned with pronouns. We're more concerned with boys being able to come men and women being able to come fucking... women becoming men. You get where we're going. These people are blowing us out of the fucking water. They're blowing us out of the water. Yeah, but everyone knows our language. How many of us know Chinese? You just kind of did a cell phone there, bro. How many of them know English? Yes, but they also know Chinese. Mandarin, different dialects, all this other stuff. Yes, that's cool. America, English is known across the world. That's fine. But that has nothing to do with America. That's like majority of which the British Empire. That had nothing to do with America. But still, the point being is they still know more of us. Because do you know Chinese? Well, they do. And they know English. So, I mean, I'm not sure what your point is on that one. But even still, it stands. We are raising stupid people. Because America has grown fat and lazy. We've become comfortable. We don't understand on the world stage, majority of which, I mean, look at America. How many of America is actually understanding the intricacy, the intricacies of what's going on geopolitically? Nobody gives a fuck. We're too busy watching what Kim Kardashian and Kanye are beefing about. We don't give a fuck. Yes, Yaretz Blake, thank you. Bread and circuses, my friends. Bread and circuses. Keep them entertained. And I don't mean distractions, but keep them entertained with other bullshit. Miraculously, COVID's gone. Massive federal fuck up. World fuck up even. But now, who's talking about COVID? No one's talking about COVID. Not really. It's just, and then I call it. Did I not fucking call it earlier this year? Watch how COVID is going to be defeated. It's going to just slowly fade away. As soon as it was here, it's going to slowly fade away. And we're going to forget all about it. Because we're just going to have, it's like that frog sitting in the cold water. You just slowly raise the temperature and the frog stays. And before you know it, the frog's been boiled alive. Now you take another frog, you take a pot of boiling water, and you drop him in it, he's going to jump out. We've been conditioned. And I'm not sitting here saying like everything's a distraction. No, these are legit instances that are happening. But Biden knows damn well, it's kind of like if you have two fucking pipes of water flowing, and this one's fucking corroded and shit, everyone's going to look at this one. In the meanwhile, turn this one off. COVID suddenly goes away, and we're focused on this. And once this one starts to get clean, let's open up another one. And this one fades away. One major thing after another. I'm just saying.
As I said before, remains to be seen. We need
absolutely,
the Russians on Iran,
absolutely. Appreciate
the
it.
Russians on Syria.
Yeah, not a peep on the trucker convoy.
You take a stick and you poke the Russians in the eye, and you continue to poke them in the eye, they're going to look for ways to retaliate. And I wouldn't be surprised if somewhere down the road they don't play ball with us on Iran. We don't get a deal with the Iranians. Be interesting to see what the Russians then do. See if they're interested in maintaining the sanctions regime. And Syria is a total mess, as you know, and if there's any hope of resolving that, the Russians are going to have to be involved. And again, it's going to be hard to get a lot of cooperation, given what's going on over Ukraine. Is Crimea lost to Russia for good? Yep, it's gone. Gone. What are the implications for Ukraine? This is in many ways the most important part of my talk, and I'll just take 2 or 3 minutes, then we can go to Q&A. When I give this talk, many people in the West think that there's sort of a deep-seated immoral dimension to my position because I'm blaming the West and not Putin, who certainly has authoritarian or thuggish tendencies. There's no question about that. But I actually think that what's going on here is that the West is leading Ukraine down the primrose path. And the end result is that Ukraine is going to get wrecked.
Mm-hmm. Yep, they are.
I believe that the policy that I'm advocating, which is neutralizing Ukraine and then building it up economically and getting it out of the competition between Russia on one side and NATO on the other side, is the best thing that could happen to the Ukrainians. What we're doing is encouraging the Ukrainians to play tough with the Russians. We're encouraging the Ukrainians to think that they will ultimately become part of the West because we will ultimately defeat Putin and we will ultimately get our way. Time is on our side. And of course, the Ukrainians are playing along with this. And the Ukrainians are almost completely unwilling to compromise with the Russians and instead want to pursue a hardline policy. Well, as I said to you before, if they do that, the end result is that their country is going to be wrecked. And what we're doing is, in effect, encouraging that outcome. I think it would make much...
Dude, verbatim what's happening now. Verbatim what's happening now. I don't know. That's just crazy to me. That's just crazy to me. I don't know, man. All right. So, if you have any information, pictures, news, updates of what's going on in the Ukraine right now, regardless of these political viewpoints and perspectives we're sharing tonight, here's the link to my Telegram chat. You can post the stuff in there. Be careful as far as no pornography and stuff like that. John, read the Peloponnesian War between Athens and ancient Sparta by Professor Donkey, whose sister-in-law Victoria. No, I know about the Peloponnesian War. It was a 20-year war between Athens and Greece, or Sparta and fucking Athens, 100%. Big fucking war. One that, oh God, the general Alcibiades fought in. Stephen Pressfield covers it in very good detail. Not as intricate as I'm sure the people you quoted are, but yeah, I did study the Peloponnesian War. But again, yes, here is the link to the Telegram chat. You can go join it, guys. You can post updates over there. Greatly appreciate your love and support. Who's streaming right now? Who on my friends list is streaming right now? I'm tired. I'm going nonstop since I fucking woke up.
How did you get A-Track on the album? I mean, you've no...
I've been going since I fucking woke up this morning, and I am tired AF. Tired AF, you know what I'm saying? Like, seriously, I'm fucking beat, dude. I am beat. Oh, my God. I'm, like, sincerely out of it. I'm so fucking tired. Like, today has just been, like, I go to work, and I deal with the business stuff. I have to do the podcast, and then I'm trying to educate myself on what's going on with this. I come home, I take a bath, I relax for like an hour, hour and a half, and then I'm right back out here trying to fucking educate myself more on this shit. And it's just like, Jesus. I'm fucking tired, man. I am so goddamn tired. I think I'm going to take a vacation soon, quite honestly. You want me to do Fat Guy Fun Time? Okay, we do Fat Guy Fun Time. Mary working tonight? She is, yep. No, she's in school tonight and then working tomorrow. So, all right, we'll go kick over a raid to Fat Guy Fun Time. He is a good dude. Appreciate y'all's love and support, man. Thank you for all of the love. Fat Guy has a very, very interesting stream. This guy is fucking hilarious. He is a very, very good entertainer. If you've never watched his stream, he's going to have you laughing when we put you guys over there. So stay tuned if you're on Twitch.
Ran me over.
Stay tuned if you're watching on Twitch. You're going to see Fat Guy Fun Time stream, and trust me, it doesn't disappoint. He is a grade A, top of the line, great entertainer. So I will talk to you guys later. I'll see you all bright and early tomorrow morning for the All American Savage Show podcast. Go join the Telegram chat. Follow me on Twitter at Sergeant Savage. And don't forget, Drunken Debates returns Saturday at 7 p.m. CST. Later, guys.